unlocked.
Yeah.
And so there's new information.
Yeah, this just came out. It's I didn't do it. I'm in it, of course, but I didn't do it. They did a powerful job. It's like a prophetic explosion, probably the best way for people to get this quick. But it also has about an hour of bonus materials about how to be ready, things that people ask all the time. What should they do? It's just a very powerful thing, you know.
Let's talk a minute about how widespread this message has been and places God has taken it.
Yeah, the Mystery of the Shemitah just came out just before the Shemitah began, so that's the autumn of this last year, and the book, and it's actually gone forth even stronger than the Harbinger, more strongly, gone around the country, and it has gone to government. As far as I know, every member of Congress has received a copy of the Mystery of the Shemitah and the Harbinger. There are presidential candidates who are giving out these books. Who have lifted them up in Congress. I mean, it's crazy, but I believe that God wants the leaders. You know, one of the things about the Harbinger and this is that leaders are involved in some of the Harbingers, even the President of the United States. You know, if you notice, and senators. So, you know, because God uses the leaders represent the land, as in ancient Israel.
Always.
So, therefore, it's interesting that he keeps on opening the door to reach leaders. And so I've been invited to go to Washington several times to speak in Congress, and there's an event that gathered leaders and presidential candidates in the Capitol that was opened by the Harbinger. I mean, so it's very prophetic days, and something happened just recently, which I believe by the time, before we're finished at one of the programs, we'll show it.
Okay.
But a prophetic moment, because I believe we're at a prophetic moment that happened in the Capitol just not long before this program.
Wow. Well, that's an amazing way God's opening those doors, Jonathan. You're also having a lot of people follow this, I guess, on YouTube and ways of
it's going out in all different ways.
It's going out over the globe.
Yeah, when I spoke in Capitol Hill, I don't even know how this happened. I mean, one of the major things was an African site, Nigeria, picked up for, I don't know what happened, and literally they have people from all over the world, America as well. Millions of people now have seen that speech, and are seeing things on the Shemitah and all those things. So yeah, God, sometimes he does it through the back door, but God has a way of getting his word out, getting the warning out. And I believe that's exactly what it is. It's a warning because God is calling us back from in the midst of judgment.
Well, you began, I know, kind of probably minding your own business, Messianic, Jewish Messianic congregation pastor, and began kind of researching, and you were led to the message of Isaiah 9:10, but all of this sort of unpackaged. But it seems like as time is going on, you've unfolded and uncovered even more things, like not just the economy, but other factors.
Oh yeah. The Mystery of the Shemitah is big. I mean, I'm bigger than I knew it was big, but I didn't realize the specifics of how big it is. We've seen when we talked before how this links to this lies behind the rise and fall of the economy, rise and fall of the stock market, the bond market. Which in the Bible it was linked to the economy and was linked to the blessings or sustenance. But it's even bigger. The Shemitah, the Mystery of the Shemitah, actually also lies behind the rise and fall of nations themselves. It actually gives the timing of global events, global cataclysms, when powers, nations, kingdoms, empires rise, when they fall, even the rise of America and what may be the fall of America. This is so big, it has affected everything. So one of the mysteries in the book and in the DVD is called literally the rise and fall of nations. And the key here is, or the precedent is, that when the Shemitah came upon Israel as a sign of judgment, this is in the days of the prophets, 586 BC, when they are wiped out, the Babylonian captivity, 70 years, the Bible says it was all geared to the timing of the Shemitahs. The land rested 70 years for the Sabbaths or Shemitahs that the land did not rest. So the judgment is the time of that. But as we alluded to last time, is that for that to happen, the entire world history had to revolve around God's timing and here in the Shemitah. That is, for the judgment to come, Babylon had to rise. They rose just before this happened. Nebuchadnezzar rises at the time of the Shemitah, or when this is going to be fulfilled. Then the Babylon had to fall as a kingdom because the Jewish people had to be released. The land after 70 years goes back. So Babylon falls, linked to the Shemitah. Then Persia, the Persian Empire, has to rise to say, Jewish people, you can go back. So the 70 years of the Shemitah will be exact. So world history is focused on this. So could this be affecting world history even in modern times? And the answer is amazingly yes. And I believe we have a clip from the DVD that begins to uncover the rise and fall of nations.
Let's watch that clip.
The conflict of the Second World War begins in 1938 when Hitler seizes Austria and Czechoslovakia. 1938 is the biblical year of the Shemitah, and it begins a 7-year biblical cycle, 1938 to 1945. The world cataclysm will follow the biblical cycle of the Shemitah.
As the year of the Shemitah, 1944 to 1945, approaches, the Second World War reaches its peak. Again, the Shemitah brings the falling of powers, the collapsing of empires, and the nullifying of landscapes. And it builds up to the greatest power of nullification the world had ever seen, with the dropping of the atomic bomb. The 7-year cycle and the year of the Shemitah reach their end in the first week of September 1945. That very same week, the Second World War reaches its end.
The war is sealed by the victors' procession in the streets of Berlin days after the surrender of the Japanese Empire. It is the only procession that will take place at the war's conclusion, sealing the Second World War.
The date of that procession is September 7th, 1945. That's Elul 29, the Shemitah's climactic day, and the very day that ends the 7-year biblical cycle.
Well, that's an amazing clip.
Yeah, it is. You know, that's just one cataclysm geared to the Shemitah, the rise and fall of nations. That's World War II, World War I as well. The year of the Shemitah marks the collapse of the Russian Empire after centuries, leads into the collapse of the Ottoman Turkish Empire, the German Empire, the Austria. All these things follow the time of the Shemitah. The Shemitah determines even things like 9/11. 9/11 happens in the year of the Shemitah. In fact, at its peak, when it reaches that wipeout week, the last week, the crescendo of wiping out, all happens at the time of the Shemitah. I mean, there's so much in this, but this has affected not only, we're saying not just our bank accounts and Wall Street, affected literally the rise and fall of nations, as it did in the time of Jeremiah. And so could it affect the rise and fall of nations in the days to come? That's the issue. So there's so much in that. But there's another thing, I'm just going to throw this in, called the mystery of the towers. The mystery of the towers, and that is this. In the Bible, there's a link that between the rising of high towers and the rising of power. The tower, in fact, in Hebrew, the word for tower is Migdal. We actually get Mary Magdalene from that name, Migdal. Migdal comes from the Hebrew word Gadal. Gadal means greatness, increase. So it's about, even pride. So there's a link between, from Babel, from the beginning, it begins with Babel, the tower going up. Well, what about America? Well, the amazing thing is that in the year 1870, America builds the highest tower on earth for the first time, the highest secular tower in the world. First time, it was always Europe. Within 1 year of that tower going up, America becomes the strongest economic power on earth, replaces the British Empire, begins the American age of rising, then becomes the military, till we are the superpower. From that day, from that tower, and it starts building the highest towers in the world. Well, there's a mystery of the towers as well. When America reaches its peak of power relative to the rest of the world, 1945 emerges this, there is a tower or a building that's conceived that year that we all know of, and that's linked to even the Harbinger. And I believe we have a clip linked to that's in the mystery of the towers in this DVD.
Well, let's see it.
So the tower is conceived in the year of the Shemitah, 1945, begun in the year of the Shemitah, 1966, completed in the year of the Shemitah, 1973, and then in the year of the Shemitah, 2001, it is destroyed.
Towers speak of the rising, the power, the glory of kingdoms. But the Shemitah speaks of the fall of nations and the humbling of a nation's glory. In the year of the Shemitah, at its climactic last week and peak, the towers of a nation's glory fall to the earth. At the Shemitah's time of nullifying, the towers are nullified. And it was shortly before the year 2001 that something momentous happened in world history. As the 20th century came to an end, the age that had begun in 1871 also came to an end.
America's days of boasting the highest towers on earth were over. It had been eclipsed by others. Now the highest towers on earth rose from Asia.
We've seen a connection between the rising of towers and the rising of kingdoms. But if the rise of high towers speak of the rise of nations, then of what does the fall of a tower speak or foreshadow? It all took place in the climactic days of the Shemitah of 2001. The warning of the Shemitah is this: a nation's blessings, its prosperity, its sustenance comes from God alone. If a nation greatly blessed by God should drive God out of its life and defy him and war against his ways, then those blessings, that prosperity, and that sustenance will be removed. And in the case of a civilization that has reigned as head of nations, the crown it has borne will be removed.
So even as Babel began building a tower to scale heaven and assert man's dominance, that's been a trend throughout history, really.
And the interesting thing is that now, this joins the harbinger together with all this too, because one of the harbingers is a tower. The fourth harbinger is the tower that goes up. So there's this tower that's been going up at ground zero of defiance, saying we're coming back stronger, we're coming back.
Right.
It's going to be very interesting what happens, and it's only been coming to its completion in the year of the Shemitah. So yes. Yeah, a tower can be a symbol of pride, and in the case of America, when you're falling away from God, this is not the time to become prideful and say we're going to get stronger than ever.
Well, we're talking with Jonathan Cahn, who is really an incredible student of Scripture and prophecy, pastor of Messianic congregation, Jewish background. And this is fascinating. And, we're just getting a taste with you of this. There's actually a full-scale DVD that you've produced, The Mystery of the Shemitah.
Unlocked.
And so...
it's just come out. We're seeing little clips of it, but the idea, it's a prophetic explosion where people can see this instantly and get it. It can show it to churches, can show it to anyone, and it also has about almost an hour of bonus features, including how to be prepared and all the other questions that we can't get to any other time. And so it has things that are nowhere else, and you actually see the things happening before your eyes.
Well, we're offering this to you, and you can call the 800 number on the screen or go to our website, prophecyinthenews.com. We have a package deal right now where you can actually get this new DVD as well as the book, The Mystery of the Shemitah, and another DVD, The Mystery of the Seventh Cow. And you can get all those separately, but if you get them as a bundle right now, it's a special price of $49.95 plus shipping and handling.
And that last one has not been generally available. It's actually what's happened since the Shemitah has begun, things that are not anywhere else. Several mysteries, including this biblical mystery of the biblical sign, the mystery of the seventh cow. Which
I know at our Prophecy Summit in Orlando, you unveiled some of that to us, and that was fascinating.
Yeah. Well, now, one of the things that people don't realize about the Shemitah, this is how big it is also the key in end-time prophecy. And that is that this is something that's there in the book in the DVD called The Mystery of the Seventh Shemitah. And that's this. Every 7 years was the Shemitah. But every seventh Shemitah was a Shemitah that ushered in a super Shemitah that we call the Jubilee. And the Jubilee was really linked to the Shemitah because in the Jubilee, it's a year of release. People are released. But it's also the year of restoration, that, as you know, that if you lost your land, you lost your house, you lost your ancestral possession, lost everything, on the year of the Jubilee, you would return to your land. It would be restored. You go back to your ancestral home. You would go home. It says, everyone shall return to their father's land or their home. So this is a restoration. Now, we know that end-time prophecy is keyed to Israel being restored to its land, to its ancestral home. The Lord can't come again until that happens. He said, you'll only see me again when you say Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai, blessed is He. Only then they have to do that in the land. So Israel coming back is the key. So here's the question: if the key is Israel coming back to its ancestral land, I mean, 2,000 years ago they lost their land. They were driven out by the Romans. They lost their inheritance. So the Jubilee, which was given to Israel, they're going back to their land, is a prophetic Jubilee. I mean, it's Israel, the people of the Jubilee, coming back to their land that they lost there. So here's the key. Could the Jubilee, could the mystery of the seventh Shemitah actually give the key of when these things, these end time events have to happen? Well, we don't know when the Jubilee was, because we don't know when, we don't have records in the Second Temple time when they celebrated. But the key is we do know when the Shemitah was celebrated. We have records.
Yes.
So the connection is, we do know, here's the clue, is that the Jubilee has to happen the year after a Shemitah. It's the 49th year, 7th Shemitah, ushers in the 50th year Jubilee. So that's the key. Could this give us the time parameters of end time events? Amazingly, yes. 1917 is the year of the Shemitah, and it's the year of shaking all over the world. Kingdoms collapsing. Well, one of the kingdoms that is collapsing is the Ottoman Turkish Empire.
Right.
The Ottoman Empire had the land of Israel for 4 centuries, 400 years under Islamic rule. They're not about to let the Jewish people have their homeland there. But the Jubilee, here it is. The Shemitah ends in September 1917. That means the year after this prophetic year is September 1917 to September 1918. That's the critical time period if something's going to happen. Did anything happen? Well, that year, that time, British soldiers are marching across the Middle East. Now, Britain had come to love Israel, actually, many British people, because of the Bible. There was a little British boy who would pray every night, Lord, restore your ancient people to their homeland, every night. And here now, England is brought into the war and is brought into the Middle East to be a player here. They enter under General Allenby, they enter Israel. The Ottoman Turkish Empire collapses. Israel goes into the hand of the British Empire, and for the first time in 2,000 years, there's a power that is friendly to Israel that's been given the land. And the general who does it, General Allenby, was the little English boy who prayed every night, God, restore your people to their land. And he's used to do it. So here it happens.
That's
and
amazing.
then when does it? So they issue the Balfour Declaration, which says the Jewish people can return. This will be a Jewish homeland. So here's the beginning of this prophetic Jubilee. When does it happen? Happens November 1917, right in the biblical prophetic parameters of when the restoration, the Jubilee, according to the seventh Shemitah. And so what happens? Everyone shall return to the land. Jewish people returning to become a homeland. They will return to their ancestral possession. What happens now if we go, I mean, that's enough there, but what happens if we go 7 Shemitahs into the future to find the next 7th Shemitah? Could that give us the prophetic timetable or parameter of when a prophetic event restoration has to happen? Well, where does it take us? The 7th Shemitah is September 1965 to September 1966. Well, that means the prophetic period following the year of the Shemitah, after the Shemitah, is September 1966 to September 1967. Anything significant happen?
I believe it does.
Well, I think so. At that time, in the parameter, June 7th, Israeli soldiers storm into the Lion's Gate of Jerusalem. They enter to the Western Wall after 2,000 years. For the first time, there are Israeli soldiers in their homeland, home city, holy city of Jerusalem. They get to the wall, prophetic restoration in the time parameter. Everyone shall return to their ancestral possession. Jerusalem is Israel's ancestral possession given by God. And what happens when the Jubilee happens? You sound the shofar. The first thing that happens when they get to that wall is the shofar is sounded at the wall by Rabbi Shlomo Gorem, military chaplain. Rabbi Shlomo Gorem was born in the year 1917, the other Jubilee. It is his Jubilee. He's 50 years old, sounding the Jubilee of Israel without even realizing it, all at the exact time. But now I'm not saying that's enough for me. I could go home right at that. I'm blessed by that. If God just did it, but God doesn't have to continue the cycle. But question, if he did, where would it take us? Well, when is the next, if we go forward to find the next 7th Shemitah, when is it? The next 7th Shemitah is the year 2015, right now. And the period after, or the prophetic period would be September 2015 to September 2016. Now, I'm saying precaution, God doesn't have to do anything, but if it followed the same pattern, the last two, it would mean war, It would mean war in the Middle East, would mean war concerning Israel, and it would result in a prophetic restoration. And the amazing thing is, some people, Isaac Newton, we learned about in physics, wrote more about biblical prophecy, the Bible, than about physics. And in it, there's something called Newton's riddle. And he wrote a thing about Daniel's 77s. And if you take it, you apply it, it would go from June 7th, the time that Israel gets Jerusalem, June 7th, 1967, count 7 sevens of years, 49 years. If you take biblical prophetic years, 360 years, it takes you to a date. It takes you, first of all, to September 2015, same time, September 23rd, which happens to be Yom Kippur, which is when the Jubilee begins. The exact date. Now, I'm not saying it has to be, and not saying that noon has to be right, but amazingly, that another thing that all things seem to be converging. Just keep it in mind. Doesn't have to happen, but keep it in mind.
That's pretty incredible. Let's look at that clip now.
It's the first time in 2,000 years that the land is being restored to the Jewish people. The year following the Shemitah was September 1917 to September 1918. The Balfour Declaration takes place in November 1917. Thus, the land is restored to the Jewish people in the year following the Shemitah, corresponding to the Jubilee. It's a prophetic Jubilee, and according to the mystery, the Jewish people now would return home to the land they had lost, to their father's possession, to their ancestral homeland. Everyone shall return to their possession. The mystery of the Jubilee concerns the seventh Shemitah. So what happens if we move forward in time from the Shemitah of 1917, 49 years to come to the seventh Shemitah? What is the seventh Shemitah? It brings us to the Shemitah of September 1965 to September 1966. The year following the Shemitah would begin September 1966 and end September 1967. Did anything significant take place within that year and within those dates? Any event of restoration? The answer is yes. According to Bible prophecy, the Jewish people have to be restored not only to their homeland, but also to their ancient holy city of Jerusalem. In the midst of the Six-Day War, Israeli soldiers enter the Lion's Gate of the biblical city of Jerusalem. Through gunfire, they make their way to the holiest site in Judaism, the Western Wall. There they weep. And after 2,000 years, the Jewish people are restored to their ancient capital, Jerusalem. It happens on June 7th, 1967. Within the parameters of the year ending in September 1967, the year following the seventh Shemitah, the Jubilee. The seventh Shemitah had ushered in the second restoration of the land. According to the mystery of the seventh Shemitah, the Jewish people had returned to what they lost 2,000 years before, Jerusalem. They had regained their long-lost possession and returned to their ancestral home. The two great restorations of the land each happened according to the mystery.
The Bible ordains that in the year of the Jubilee, the shofar, the ram's horn, is to be sounded. The first thing that happens after the soldiers reached the Temple Mount in 1967 is that the ram's horn is sounded from the Temple Mount, the sound of the Jubilee.
The man who sounds it is Rabbi Shlomo Goren. Rabbi Goren was born in the year 1917, the time of the other restoration. When he sounds the shofar, he is 50 years old, the number of the Jubilee.
The mystery of the Shemitah lies behind the two great end-time restorations of Israel's lands. Now, the pattern and cycle does not have to continue, but if it did, what would be the seventh Shemitah from the last restoration?
The seventh Shemitah begins September 2014, goes to September 2015. The year following the seventh Shemitah is that of September 2015 to September 2016. While the cycle doesn't have to continue and nothing significant has to take place, In the last two occurrences, it has meant war in the Middle East, war in the land of Israel, and a war resulting in a prophetic restoration.
What an incredible word about the age we're living in and the years right in front of us. Well, so the next seventh one is going to be in this coming time. And of course, we haven't spoken of the exact date of the
Elul 29, the wipeout.
Right.
Which
when
we
is
will,
it going to be this fall?
It's going to be this fall in September, and I know we're going to get into all the details, but September 13th.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to happen, but we will get into that about what's happening in this Shemitah, where we're going, where's America going, are we racing towards judgment?
That's good. And I look forward to the next show because we're going to be examining the roots of America and really why America is under judgment from God. And these are really decisive times we live in. They can be frightening, but they can also be exciting. This is a great opportunity for the Lord. Just last week I had a woman that I visited with, and she was very concerned about some of these things we're talking about, some of the signs, the blood moons. And, I began to talk with her, and she was assuming, because she had interest in this, that she knew the Lord. But as I began to question and probe with her, she really did not have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so we weren't talking so much about the blood moon as the blood of the cross.
Yes.
And she gave her life to Christ and was
That's
saved.
it.
And
that's what it's about.
she's come forward in our church to follow the Lord in baptism. So
Yeah.
that's the great thing, is you don't have to live in fear. You don't have to live in chaos. Christ came to save us, and even as God is the God of all the nations, He'll be the God of your own life if you'll surrender and place your life in His hands.
Yeah.
We want to urge you to do that because Jesus came, died for you, gave His precious life's blood so you could be forgiven. Then He was buried and rose again. And He says if you'll trust Him and surrender to Him, you'll have everlasting life. If you've never done that, I want to urge you to do that.